Konohagakure, morning after the Kyuubi attack. Hiruzen Sarutobi, third Hokage of Konoha, was not having a good morning. He sighed as he looked out of his office window at the wreckage caused by the Kyuubi last night. The beast had caused massive amounts of damage and killed many of their shinobi and civilians that were not able to get to the shelters fast enough. He rubbed the temples of his head and turned back to the office. It had been years since he last looked at the office from that side of the desk. He had given his hat over to Minato Namikaze years ago and had been proud of the man. T was with a heavy heart he was here today. Minato had given his life last night to seal away the Kyuubi within a powerful seal. While his sacrifice helped keep many from dying and possibly saved the village, he left a large problem. A soft giggle turned Hiruzen's attention to the far corner of the room. A small white cradle was placed there. Inside was a small blonde-haired child. His body wiggled out of the blanket he was wrapped in and smile went across Hiruzen's face when the child opened his crystal blue eyes to look at him. This child was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, and also the holder of the Kyuubi. To defeat the beast, Minato had to seal it inside of someone, and being the man of honor he was, could not ask anyone else to do it. With a heavy heart he had chosen to seal the beast inside his newborn son. Hiruzen closed his eyes and shook his head to clear his thoughts. Last night he had told the council what had happened and he was not happy with the reactions. Minato, in his final moments, had wished the child to be seen as a hero. Most of the civilians wanted the child dead to finish off the beast. The shinobi side of the council had been quiet and Hiruzen had only stayed for a minute, telling them they would resume the meeting in the morning after everyone had calmed down. A knock on his door broke him from his musings. Yes. The door opened and revealed an Anbu dressed in all black. Gray armor could be seen behind the black cloak draped over their body. The figure was around 5 feet 10 and their face hidden behind a white mask representing a dog. Silver hair peeked out above the mask. Hokage-sama, the council has been gathered like you asked and are waiting for you. Hiruzen nodded and started towards the door. Thank you, Inu. Would you please stay here and watch young Naruto while I'm gone? The Anbu shinobi nodded quickly. Hi Hokage-sama. The old Hokage nodded back and walked down the halls of the Hokage tower towards the council chambers. Once he entered, he looked around the room. The room had 2 long tables on either side of it, one for the shinobi council, the other for the civilian council. At the ends of the aisle created by the tables was his desk, and across from that was a small table where the 3 elders sat. Everyone bowed their heads when Hiruzen walked in. Giving them a quick nod, he walked to his desk and sat down. He reached into his robes to pull his pipe from the folds. Packing in some tobacco and lighting it, he took a long drag before facing the councils. I hope everyone here has had a chance to calm down from last night. He looked around the room and noticed the scowls on the civilians' face, no doubt still angry. The shinobi were all calm. Many had been part of the last war and were used to losing others through violence. While they may be sad, they all knew they had to keep calm about the situation. The elders were also calm. The trio were all ex-teammates of Hiruzen's and had been through more trouble than this attack. Good. Now I'm sure you all have thought about our situation and I am willing to listen to any thoughts. Who would like to begin? An explosion of screams came from the civilian side of the room, all about how they should kill young Naruto. Hiruzen stared the group down and let his killing intent flood the room. Quickly the councilmen and women sat down. Most of them sweating heavily and paled when they felt the man's gaze on them. I am going to say this once and only once, we will not kill the boy. Minato gave his life to seal the beast and his last wish was for this boy to be seen as a hero. You may not wish to honor my late successor, but I will. Many people looked down at that last part of his comment, but the civilians did not back down. A slim balding man stood up. Hokage-sama, how can we let that demon live among us? Hiruzen narrowed his eyes at the man. I believe I mentioned yesterday that no one is to speak of the Kyuubi, whether in council or not. Calling him a demon falls under that rule, councilman. The man paled and quickly bowed. I am sorry Hokage-sama, please forgive me, it was a slip of the tongue. He gave the man a grunt and took another drag of his pipe. This time I will, but I warn you all, I will not be tolerating such talk again. He watched as all the council nodded in understanding and continued. As I was saying, Minato wanted the boy to grow and eventually the seal he placed on him will absorb the Kyuubi's power, thus killing it. Killing the boy will only free the beast and eventually it will reform and attack us again. Whispered spread around the room at the information. In truth, the seal made it so that in Naruto died he would drag the Kyuubi to the afterlife with him, but Hiruzen figured it wouldn't hurt to keep that a secret. So what will happen to the boy? Hiruzen turned to the speaker, Sume Inuzuka, head of the Inuzuka clan. He will be turned over to the orphanage and raised just as any orphan would. The woman nodded slightly at the answer, but he could see the disagreement in her eyes. He too knew that from the civilians' actions Naruto would have a hard life, but he hoped after some time it would pass. Excuse me, Hiruzen. The Hokage looked up and across the room to the elders to see Danzo raising his only good arm. Danzo and Hiruzen rarely got along. Both wanted what was best for the village but had different ideas on how to achieve this. Danzo viewed military superiority and fear the best was to make Konoha the best. While Hiruzen agreed with some of Danzo's ideas, the two often butt heads. Yes, Danzo, do you have a problem with that? Hiruzen had an idea of what Danzo would want. Naruto was housing the most powerful of the tailed beasts, and if he knew Danzo, he would want the boy to train him to become an emotionless killing machine. Actually, yes, I was wondering why we would deny the boy his heritage. The entire room went silent, and if Hiruzen hadn't been prepared, his pipe might have fallen right from his mouth. He stared Danzo down, trying to figure out where Danzo could be going with this, and he was curious about how Danzo knew of the boy's family. Before he could start to speak, Shikaku Nara cut in. I'm sorry, Danzo-san, but we are all under the impression that Naruto was an orphan. Many in the room nodded to that. Danzo just cleared his throat. I never said the boy was not an orphan, merely that he had a heritage. Hiruzen, you did say last night the boy was an Uzumaki, did you not? Everyone turned to Hiruzen, who was taking a drag of his pipe. He had calmed down when he realized Danzo was talking about Naruto's mother, not his father. He still wondered what Danzo's plan was, but he would let this conversation go on for now. If it went well, he could improve Naruto's life greatly. Yes, I did. Then why is he not being named clan heir? The Uzumaki are a very powerful clan and important to Konoha. I see it as a slight to our friendship with them to dishonor a child from them. Whispers spread around the room and a civilian woman with long brown hair spoke up. Excuse me, Danzo-san, but I have never heard of the Uzumaki clan. If they're so important, why do none of us know of them? Many of the other civilians nodded along to this, but Hiruzen decided to step in. The Uzumaki clan were the founders of Uzushiogakure, a village that unfortunately was destroyed many years ago in the Second Shinobi War. We had been in an alliance with them since the founding of our village. In fact, the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, was married to an Uzumaki. Hiruzen watched as the civilians looked shocked at that piece of information. The clan was well known for their skills in Fuinjutsu and Kenjutsu. In fact, Minato, my student Jiraiya, and myself all learned most of our Fuinjutsu skills from Uzumaki scrolls. If what you say is true, does that mean the boy is related to Tsunade Senju? Seeing that her grandmother was an Uzumaki, the room turned their attention to Choza Akamichi. To answer both of your questions, I only know his name from Minato. I have nothing to prove he is an actual Uzumaki. Danzo nodded. Understandable, but I have an idea that may prove the boy is an Uzumaki, and if so, I think we should give him all the rights of a clan heir. Hiruzen analyzed Danzo carefully. He still couldn't figure out what Danzo would get from all of this. If Naruto was named a clan heir, he would be under the Shinobi Council, and Danzo had no power or influence there. Why should we even check, Danzo-san? Giving that boy a clan will only give him more power and allow the demon to kill us easier. A portly councilman slammed his hand to the table to emphasize his point, but Danzo didn't flinch as he answered. Before Uzushiogakure fell, they asked Mito-sama to hold many of their scrolls. Those scrolls most likely contain the knowledge of the clan and can only be given to an Uzumaki. If the boy is named heir, he will be given all of the scrolls, and it will greatly improve Konoha in many ways. Hiruzen rubbed his chin as Danzo finished. The man made strong points, but he suspected there was another reason Danzo was doing this. You make good points, Danzo. So what is this way you thought of? The room's attention turned to Danzo as he cleared his throat. As I said, Mito-sama was in possession of clan scrolls. I assume that since the clan was so well known for their skill in fuinjutsu, all of the scrolls are sealed with blood seals. We simply place some of the boy's blood on a scroll, and if it opens, there is no question about his heritage. Hiruzen took another drag of his pipe and thought out Danzo's idea. It had merit, and it would prove to everyone Naruto was an Uzumaki without him having to reveal who Naruto's parents were. I am curious as to everyone else's view on this idea. By show of hands, who thinks we should go along with Danzo's idea? He watched as all of the clan heads and elders raised their hands. He mentally smirked at that, knowing the motion had passed. All those against. The civilians grumbled as they raised their hands. Very well. I and the elders will go and retrieve a scroll from the Hokage vault. I will call all of you once we have found one, and we will see if young Naruto's blood works. If so, I will notify Tsunade, but knowing her, I doubt she will come back to help raise the boy. Many nodded sadly at that, but Inoichi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan, raised his hand. Excuse me, Hokage, but why the vault? If it was Mito-sama's, then would they not be at the Senju compound? Hiruzen had begun to clean out his pipe but looked up to Inoichi. When Tsunade left the village, I sealed all of the clan's scrolls in the Hokage vault for safekeeping. If she was to return, I would hand all of it back to her, of course. He nodded and stood to leave with the rest of the council. Once the room was empty, save for the elders and Hiruzen, he stood in motion for them to follow him. The small group walked down the hall to a set of stairs and began to travel down. After going down several flights, they came to a door with two Anbu guarding it, both of their mask resembling birds but different paint lines on them. The shinobi immediately put the hands forward in a cross shape. Kai. After nothing happened, one of the Anbu turned and opened the door behind him. Hiruzen led the group down a dark hallway until they came to a massive set of steel doors. They were 8 foot tall and both looked to be 4 feet wide. The doors were decorated with what appeared to be vines across them. All of you are to turn around and not look at me while I open the doors. If I even think you are peeking, I will be forced to kill you immediately. The trio turned around, none of them even flinched at the thought of death. Satisfied they were not looking, Hiruzen turned back to the door and channeled chakra to his hands. He then reached up and began touching specific vines. As he touched them, they glowed green. Eventually all of the vines were glowing and the doors started to open inward. You may turn around now. The others turned and all of their eyes widened at the sight before them. The room was a large metal box that went farther back than they could see. The only light in the room was from glowing seals all along the ceiling. The three quickly followed after Hiruzen as he made his way down the aisle of bookcases. Their eyes wandered across the shelves as they passed. Plaques were placed on each shelf with different labels to let people know what they contained. Soon they came to the back of the room and they looked to see tall safes lining the back. Hiruzen walked over to one and began to twirl the dial on it. After a second he opened the safe and walked inside, flicking on a light as he did. Danzo inspected the room as he walked in. Shelves held multiple scrolls in the room and Hiruzen was facing the right side. When I placed all the scrolls in here, I separated them from Senju and Uzumaki. The ones along this wall are all of the Uzumaki. The three nodded and looked at all the scrolls. Which one should we choose, Hiruzen? He shrugged his shoulders and looked at the scrolls in front of him. I have no idea what they hold, so we should choose a small one, that way we know it will not have much information on it. The three nodded and Kaharu Udatane reached over to a shelf and picked up a small looking scroll. She tried to remove the clasp on it but it didn't budge. This one should do. She handed it to Hiruzen and he tried to open it as well. When he failed, he nodded and gestured to the exit. The group made their way out of the vault. Once they passed the metal doors, Hiruzen pulled them closed with a large slam. They then made their way back to the main level of the tower. You three go and have something to eat. I will check on Naruto and then call a meeting in 1 hour. The three nodded and left the Hokage as he went to his office. Upon entering, he hears a crying Naruto and looks to see Inu holding the boy and rocking him. Come on, Naruto, quiet down. Please. Pretty please. The Anbu let out a groan as he continued to try to quiet the child. A chuckle from behind him caused him to turn around and see the Hokage. Ah, Hokage-sama, how was the meeting? Hiruzen walked over to his desk and placed the scroll on it. It was interesting to say the least. Has he been crying long? Inu shook his head. Only for a minute. I think he wants to be fed because he does not smell. Hiruzen nodded and walked over to the shinobi with his arms out. Give him to me and go to the hospital. A nurse named Agaya Oda should be working. She has agreed to be Naruto's wet nurse. The Anbu nodded but hesitated. Are you sure you can trust her, sir? Hiruzen nodded as he rocked Naruto. I had Ibiki talk to her. He said she was clear, but I would like you to watch over her in the shadows until I'm positive. Inu paused a moment and Hiruzen let out a sigh. Get your mind out of the gutter, Inu. Shaking his head, he bowed and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Hiruzen let out another sigh and looked at the scroll on his desk. He knew Naruto would be able to open it, but he worried very few things Danzo suggested went well for him. Council chambers. 1 hour later. Hiruzen sat quietly with Naruto in his arms as the last of the counselors came into the room. He could see the fear and hate in the eyes of the civilian councils but paid it no mind. The clan heads' looks varied from concern to simple boredom. Once everyone was settled, he cleared his throat. Thank you all for returning. I believe we all would like to get this over with, so Homura, Danzo and Kaharu, would you please come forward? The 3 elders stood and walked to Hiruzen's desk. Is the scroll there, the one we found in the vault? The 3 looked down at the scroll and Kaharu picked it up. She inspected it before handing it over to Danzo, who handed it to Homura after inspection. Homura put it down after his inspection and nodded to the others before turning to Hiruzen. We all agree that it is. Thank you. Please return to your seats. The 3 bowed their heads and moved back to their table. Hiyashi-san, Fugaku-san, would you two please use your dojutsu and inspect the scroll? The 2 men nodded. Sharingan. Byakugan. Fugaku's eyes morphed from their normal black into red irises with 2 tomes around the edge. He inspected the scroll and noticed that the clasp had chakra in it but nothing else. The veins around Hiyashi's eyes bulged out as he inspected the scroll, noticing the same chakra location. I do not notice anything except chakra located around the clasp, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen nodded and turned to Hiyashi. Do you agree with that, Hiyashi-san? The Hyuga nodded, deactivating his eyes. Shifting Naruto into one arm, he grabbed the scroll and tossed it to Shikaku. Shikaku, would you please attempt to open the scroll? The Nara let out a sigh. Troublesome. Yes, Hokage-sama. He bites his thumb to draw blood and swiped it over the clasp. It glowed red for a few seconds then died down. Shikaku pulled on the clasp but it did not give. Thank you, Shikaku-san. Inoichi-san, would you please bring the scroll up here? The blonde nodded and took the scroll from his friend as he walked to the desk. Hiruzen gently sent Naruto on the table and pulled out a kunai from his robe, holding up to Inoichi. If you would please, the man nodded and took the kunai from him. He placed the scroll down and used the free hand to take hold of Naruto's hand. As gently as possible he pricked the boy's hand, making the child start to cry. Inoichi felt slightly bad but continued on. Placing the weapon down, he rubbed and squeezed Naruto's hand to make the blood flow. Once enough was there, he grabbed the scroll from the table and rubbed the clasp into the boy's hand. The clasp started to glow red just like with Shikaku, but after a second there was a click and Inoichi's eyes widened. He pulled the scroll open, but before he got too far Hiruzen cleared his throat. That is enough, Inoichi-san. That scroll is not for anyone's eyes to see but young Naruto. The man nodded and placed the scroll down on the table before going back to his seat. Oda-san. The council turned as a young woman with short black hair walked into the room with an Anbu guard behind her. She quickly walked to the desk and picked up Naruto. With a quick bow she and the Anbu left. Hiruzen pulled out a handkerchief and cleaned off the kunai, looking around the room as he did. The eyes of the civilian side were wide and summoned scowls on their faces. They may not know much about shinobi arts but they knew what had just happened. The clan heads all looked to be deep in thought, most likely deciding on how this affected the village. His eyes rested on the elders, while Homura and Kaharu looked somewhat pleased to have a new clan and the jutsu that would come with it. Danzo looked natural and that made Hiruzen worry. Once he put the weapon away he folded his hands together. Now then, for those of you who did not realize what happened, we have proved that Naruto is indeed an Uzumaki and as such has the right to become a clan heir. He paused for a moment for questions. When now came, he continued. Now then, by show of hands, who believes we should allow Naruto to become the Uzumaki clan heir? Just like earlier, everyone but the civilian side of the council raised their hands. Very well, and those who oppose? The civilians barely raised their hands. Thank you. Then by order of the Hokage, I declare Naruto Uzumaki clan heir of the Uzumaki clan. If there is no other important business, then the civilian council is dismissed. All of them rose and left the room in a huff. Hiruzen waited before turning to the shinobi. Now we need to discuss what is going to happen with young Naruto. The group nodded, but Sume raised her hand. Excuse me, Hokage-sama, but I have a question about the pup's parents. Hiruzen let out a sigh and nodded. He knew that someone would figure out Naruto's mother once they saw he was an Uzumaki. He decided to keep acting like he didn't know for sure. With his status as clan heir, it wasn't going to protect him from anyone wanting revenge on Kushina. I believe I know what you are going to say, Sume-san. I did some investigating during the break and found that there was an Uzumaki female that was pregnant and should have given birth around the time of the Kyuubi attack. That woman was Kushina Uzumaki. He looked at the reactions of the group. More than he thought looked shocked. Obviously they recognized the name. Sume, Shikaku and Shibi Aburame didn't react. Obviously they had figured it out. As far as I know, Kushina is dead. His body has not been recovered, but of course there are many unaccounted for. I will look into who knew Kushina to see if we can find the father. Does that answer your question, Sume-san? The woman nodded. Hiruzen pulled out his pipe and started to pack it with tobacco. Now, since Naruto is a clan head and the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, I suggest we have Anbu watch over him. The woman you saw earlier has agreed to watch over Naruto as his nurse until he is able to function on his own. At that time I will hire someone to guard and watch over him until he reaches 15 or becomes a genin. He paused to light his pipe and took a drag. Does anyone have a problem with my decision or comments? The clan heads all looked to each other. Choza looked to the Hokage. Where will they be staying? There is an Uzumaki compound close to the Hokage monument. Mito-sama created when she arrived. I believe Kushina-san kept the compound maintained but did not live there. I will have someone check the compound before they move in. Choza smiled and nodded to the idea. Anyone else? After seeing everyone shakes their heads, Hiruzen stood. Very well. Thank you all for your time and have a nice evening. He gave a quick bow to them and made his way to his office. Once inside, he saw Agaya changing Naruto's diaper on the floor. Inu stood in the corner looking out the window but turned to Hiruzen and bowed as he walked in. How did it go, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen lifted his pipe to his lips and began to speak when Agaya cut in. Hokage-sama, please don't smoke around the baby. He quickly snuffed out the pipe and bowed to her. My apologies, Agaya-san. I am not used to being around children. The woman nodded as she picked up Naruto and checked the bandages on his hand. As I was going to say, Inu, it is decided that Naruto will be the Uzumaki heir. Agaya smiled and looked at the Hokage. Does that mean I will be hired full-time, Hokage-sama? He nodded as he sat down but looked at her with a serious face. Yes, Agaya, but I must warn you, people are not accepting of Naruto. While I do not think they will resort to violence, your life will not be an easy one if you watch him. Inu watched the woman as she stared at the aged leader. I am aware, Hokage-sama, but it is the right thing to do. I can't abandon a child in need for something he had no control over. It goes against every reason I have for being a nurse. The man gave her a small smile. I hope others will see it like that too one day, but for now please be careful. I will assign some Anbu to watch over you and Naruto soon and have the Uzumaki compound ready for you to move into by tonight. The woman nodded and walked to the crib in the corner. I will head home now and pack some clothes. She gave him a quick bow and rushed out the door, closing it behind her. Hiruzen turned to Inu. What is your opinion of her? Inu straightened up and walked in front of the desk. She seems to be honest with her feelings. I had a clone hidden in the room when she came back with Naruto. I told her I need to take care of something and to wait in here for me to return. From the memories, she simply played with the boy and not once tried to harm him. The Hokage nodded and pulled out a scroll. He grabbed a pen and started to write on it. I want you to deliver this scroll to Dragon, then make your way to the Uzumaki compound and check it. Inu took the scroll and looked at it. May I ask what is in here, Hokage-sama? I am asking Dragon to find some Anbu he trusts to watch over Naruto until I deem it fit. Inu nodded and headed for the door. Inu, the man stopped and looked back at the cage. The clan heads and elders know who his mother is. If you think that will help out with finding trusting Anbu, I want you to spread the information. Is that wise, sir? While Kushina-sama didn't have many enemies, people could figure out the father. Hiruzen chuckled at the panic in his voice. Don't fear, Inu. Even I didn't know they were a couple until they told me they were pregnant. I'm not sure how they kept the secret, but I believe it will be fine. This way some shinobi will be more likely to watch over him than hate him. Inu let out a long sigh and turned to the door. I hope so, Hokage-sama. I really do. As he closed the door, Hiruzen turned to look at the village and spoke quietly. I do to Kakashi. Below Konoha Danzo made his way through the lower tunnels under Konoha. He had cleared these areas for his root unit. Root was something Danzo created to make the perfect soldiers, emotionless shinobi willing to give their life if need be for Konoha. Hiruzen had told him to disband the unit after the Third War, but he knew they were something Konoha needed. As he made his way to his office, two figures fell in behind him. Both were dressed similar to Abu troops, but only so if seen no one would think they were not. One wore a tiger mask while the other was bug-like. The two silently followed behind until they reached Danzo's office. Walking in, Danzo sat down and looked up at them. I want a team to go to the Uzumaki compound. I am sure that Hiruzen will have someone check it out, but do a second sweep after they leave. Have a second team find and do a background check on the women who will be watching over the child. I want to make sure she is not working for anyone and has only the boy's best interest at heart. The two men nodded but stayed where they were. Danzo raised an eyebrow at them. You have something to say. The two exchanged a look before Tiger spoke. Danzo-sama, we do not mean to question your judgment, but shouldn't we place some seals or something to monitor the boy? Danzo chuckled. No, I guarantee that eventually Jiraiya will look over the house, and if any seals are found he will start to look around, and we cannot afford that. Plus I have no interest in monitoring the boy yet. The men shared another look, but Danzo spoke before they had a chance. If you are wondering why I did not try to bring the boy under my thumb, the answer is simple. Jinchuriki cannot have their emotions locked away like those I train. It is imperative they are in the right mind to keep the beast at bay. He leaned back in his chair. I was truthful when I said I want the boy to learn all of the fuinjutsu and skills of the Uzumaki. If he is raised to love this village, he will improve our military strength, and any children he has will only help us in the future. The Uzumaki were a feared clan. With the power of the Kyuubi in one, he will be stronger than any other Jinchuriki. The two nodded and bowed to Danzo. Understood, Danzo-sama, we did not mean to question you. He waved his hand at the men and they disappeared from the office in a swirl of leaves. After they left, he opened a drawer on his desk and pulled a picture from it. It showed Danzo, in battle gear during the Third War, his sword strapped to his side. He was flanked by different shinobi also in battle gear, but a small smile crossed his face when his eye fell on a young woman. I always repay my debts, Kushina. Hiruzen nodded his head to the villagers as he passed by them on the street. The village was in good spirits despite the attack just happening, and it did his heart good to see smiling faces. He walked into the tower and made his way to his office, making small talk and exchanging pleasantries with the people there. He opened his door and walked to his desk. The morning's paperwork was already there and he let out a long sigh. Damn you, Minato. He placed his hat on the table and began to look over the papers. He knew the next few days were going to be hell, but that was life. He pulled out his pen and began looking over all of the papers. After an hour, there was a knock on his door. Come in. The door opened to reveal a tall Anbu wearing a detailed dragon mask walked into the room. Good morning, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen nodded and placed his pen down. And a good morning to you, dragon. Is there something I can help you with? The man nodded and looked around the room. Clear the room. Two figures stepped out from the shadows in the corners and walked out the door. Dragon closed it behind them and walked to a chair in front of Hiruzen's desk. Inu gave me your scroll yesterday. I have no problem with losing a team for the boy, however I do have a question. Hiruzen leaned back into his chair. I will tell you anything I can but know that details of the boy are S-class secrets, the Anbu nodded. Of course sir, Inu informed us that there is a chance this boy is Kushina-sama's child, is this true? Hiruzen raised an eyebrow at the Anbu. Sama. Dragon started to chuckle. She may not have ever been my superior sir but I am aware of what her codename was. She deserves nothing less. That is good to hear but yes I am almost positive she is the mother. No one else who bore the name Uzumaki was registered as pregnant in the hospital records. Dragon rubbed his neck. Yes I had visited her a few nights ago. She said the due date was soon so it makes sense I just wanted to be clear. He reached behind his back and pulled out a scroll. I went ahead and informed the others about the boy and asked the captains to volunteer for the assignment. Here is the list of teams willing to guard the boy. Hiruzen took the scroll and opened it. His eyes widened slightly and looked up at Dragon. You are sure about this? Dragon gave a stern nod. Hi, most volunteered before I even asked and after word spread he was Kushina-sama's son the rest followed. Hiruzen chuckled. Well I was hoping that at least a few Anbu would want to watch over the boy but I didn't expect all of them. Dragon shrugged. We are not simple-minded fools Hokage-sama. We lose friends and comrades often. We know that Naruto isn't the QB and don't blame him. I think we should pick Hawk's team though, that was the team Kushina-sama lead until she took her leave. Neiko replaced her but I know she idolized Kushina-sama so we can trust her. Hiruzen nodded and put down the scroll. That sound fine to me, clear it with all of them to be sure. This is not a normal job for Anbu and I don't want to force anyone to do it. If members are not comfortable with the mission change them out for others who are. Dragon nodded and stood up. Hi Hokage-sama. They should be here by 3. Hiruzen nodded as the man left his office, the 2 Anbu guards walking back into their corners. He rolled the scroll up and placed it into a drawer. He was happy that Naruto had the backing of Anbu. It would make his life easier know that. Hokage-sama. He looked up to see the face of his secretary. Yes Misaki. She stepped into the room. The civilian council would like to meet with you about the repairs to the village. Hiruzen let out a sigh. Do I have anything planned for this morning? She walked out of the door for a few moments and returned. No sir. He nodded and stood from the desk, letting out a groan. Very well. He placed his hat on and began walking out. Please add a meeting for me at 3 with Anbu for today. The woman nodded and sat back at her desk as he walked down the hall. Uzumaki compound Agaya stood outside of the room she had claimed as her own, taking in the scenery. The Uzumaki compound was a large open area surrounded by trees just behind the 8-foot walls defining the compound. The house itself was a classical-style 2-floor building set close to the entrance of the compound. She guessed that was so people could train away from the house without fear of hitting it. Just behind the house was a lovely garden with a small koi pond, a stone table for outdoor use and, much to her delight, a medium-sized onsen. She turned back into the house and walked to check on Naruto, who was still asleep. Agaya-san, she turned to see Inu standing in the doorway holding some bags. Inu-san, thank you for getting groceries. I know it's asking a lot especially of an Anbu. He placed them down at the door and shook his head. It was no trouble at all I assure you but I must be on my way now. She crossed the room and took up the bags. Of course I'm sure the Anbu are very busy. He chuckled and shook his head. No I just need to eat. The two shared a laugh before she bowed to him. Again thank you for your help. He waved her off. I was happy too. I know that a team of Anbu is being assigned today so we probably won't be seeing each other again. He crossed the room as he spoke and looked at Naruto. Agaya had a feeling he was talking to the baby more than her so she stayed quiet. After a minute he turned around and headed out the door. Goodbye Agaya-san. With a quick nod he disappeared as a swirl of leaves. She gave a small smile. Goodbye Inu-san. Hokage office. Hiruzen looked over the papers in front of him when he felt chakra building and looked up as 4 figures appeared in his office. It was the Anbu he had been waiting on. Once they appeared they went down to one knee and bowed. Hokage-sama. Hiruzen looked over the shinobi in front of him. Rise, the four stood to attention showing their mask to Hiruzen. Neiko stood to his far left. She was smaller than the others but he knew that was mostly due to her age. Her purple hair was tied into a ponytail falling over her left shoulder and a katana on her left hip. Next to her was a stocky bald man wearing an ox mask. He seemed relaxed but Hiruzen could tell he was ready to strike at a moment's notice. The third member was a lanky man wearing a rat mask. His black hair was pulled back into a small ponytail. The final member was an average-looking man with short dirty blonde hair barely showing behind his hawk mask. Please stand at ease. The four relaxed slightly but it was the best Hiruzen was going to get from Anbu. He pulled out his pipe and began to pack it. Did Dragon explain the mission you have been chosen for? Hawk stepped forward. He did Hokage-sama. Hiruzen nodded and light his pipe. And you four are fine with a babysitting job. He looked at the four as he took a drag of the pipe. Hawk glanced back and when he got a nod from everyone looked back at his leader. Hi Hokage-sama. Hiruzen nodded and handed him 4 folders. He passed his teammates theirs and opened his. Very well. The job is very basic. Your mission is to watch over and protect Naruto Uzumaki and his nurse Agaya Oda. He nodded and flipped some of the pages. In the event of an emergency, do we prioritize the boy? Hiruzen took a puff of his pipe and let out a sigh. Yes, Hawk nodded. He knew Hiruzen didn't like to put one life over another but in this event it was the right call. How much of a presence should we be? Seeing as the boy is a baby and will not be active, I am fine with you being visible but mask stay on at all times. I am fine with you being somewhat relaxed as long as you stay alert. Hawk nodded. Schedule. That is up to you and your team. Will you be escorting us there? Hiruzen shook his head and handed him a scroll. No, I am too busy right now. Go when you are ready and hand this to Agaya-san. The man took the scroll and bowed. Will do Hokage-sama. The other 3 bowed and then all of them disappeared in swirls of leaves. Uzumaki compound Agaya sang softly to Naruto as he was feeding and mental went over supplies she needs to get. The house was full furnished and she had some food for a day or two but she needed the rest of her clothes and bath supplies. She was broken from her thoughts when she heard a knock on the door. Adjusting the towel she moved to look through the peephole and saw an Anbu with a bird mask. Who is it? Hawk of the Anbu, we are the team sent to watch over you and young Naruto Oda-san. She cracked the door open slightly and looked at the man. Hawk-san, could you give me 1 minute? I am in the middle of feeding. The man nodded. Of course, please take your time. She smiled and moved into the living room. Sitting on the couch she made sure she was covered. You may enter, Hawk-san. The 4 Anbu walked into the house and looked at her in the living room. Ox quickly turned around to face the wall when he realized what she was doing. The others laughed at him. I am sorry Anbu-san, I didn't mean to embarrass you. Ox cleared his throat. It is fine ma'am. Hawk looked at Rat. Take Ox and do a walk through. He nodded and slapped Ox on the shoulder as he passed, letting him know to follow him. Hawk turned to Agaya and bowed. Oda-san, as I said, I am Anbu Captain Hawk. This is my teammate Neiko and the 2 that left were Ox, the shy one, and Rat. We have been assigned to watch over you and Naruto. He walked over and placed the scroll the Hokage gave him on the coffee table by her. That is from the Hokage. She nodded and looked to Hawk. So how will all of this work exactly? Hawk walked over to a chair and sat down. He looked to Neiko and gestured for her to sit. At least 2 of us will be awake watching over you at a time. The Hokage is fine that we stay in sight, so we will act naturally around you so as not to make you uncomfortable. We will however be keeping our mask on and must go by our Anbu names. Agaya nodded as Naruto finished and moved her hand under the towel to readjust herself. So we will basically be living together, Hawk nodded. Yes, but I ask that you try not to get too personal with us. We of course have no problem being social but we cannot afford to reveal who we are and must stay away from too many personal questions. She nodded as she placed Naruto on her shoulder and patted his back. Will I be able to leave him with you if I need to run errands or bath? Of course, while we are not nurses like you we can certainly watch him for a bit, she smiled. Well, that's all I can think of for now. Would you like a tour of the compound? Hawk stood and bowed. That would be wonderful. Naoko stood and followed behind the two. Equals 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 root base equals 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 equals. Danzo was looking over a report from one of his team's missions when someone knocked on his door. Enter. Tiger stepped through the door and bowed to Danzo. Danzo-sama, I came with a report on Naruto Uzumaki. He closed the folder he was looking at and looked up to Tiger. Proceed. The man stood up straight and took a breath. Earlier this afternoon the Hokage assigned Anbu Team 5 under Captain Hawk to watch over the boy. The team consists of Anbu Hawk, Naoko, Ox and Rat. Danzo scratched his chin. What do we know of them? Team 5 was the team Kushina Uzumaki was captain of before she took leave due to pregnancy. Hawk, Ox and Rat were her subordinates and she recommended Hawk to replace her. Naoko was added to the team because of her kenjutsu knowledge. Danzo nodded. Good. How is the background search going for the nurse? So far we have found nothing, but I believe we will need more time just to be sure. Danzo nodded. Agreed. You are dismissed. Hi Danzo-sama. He bowed quickly and left the office. Uzumaki compound. 4 years later Naoko slipped her mask over her face and pulled a hair tie from her waist and wrapping it around her hair. Stretching, she walked out of her room just as a blonde blur ran by, closely followed by an upset Agaya. Naruto Uzumaki, you get back here, young man. Naoko looked down the hall past Agaya to see Naruto was naked. No bath. The naked blonde bolted down the hall and into the living room. You will get in that tub, young man. Agaya went to grab him, but he dove under the coffee table and crawled to the other side. He stood up and ran to one side, heading towards the dining room. His leg was suddenly grabbed and lifted into the air. The blonde stared upside down at Ox, who was laughing. Gotcha, kid. Agaya stormed over and looked at the boy with a glare, making him frown. If Ox-san lets you down, will you be a good boy and take a bath? He pouted but nodded his head. Ox chuckled as he set the boy down. You would think he would realize by now you're always going to catch him. Agaya let out a sigh as she took the pouting blonde's hat and led him back to the bathroom. Naoko rubbed his head as she passed. Good try, Naru-kun. The boy smiled up at her. Naoko Ne-chan, will you read to me after my bath? She nodded her head and the boy smiled before rushing to the bathroom. Yai. She smiled behind her mask and moved into the living room. Good morning, Naoko. She looked up and saw Ox reading the paper. Morning. Anything happened while I was out? Ox shook his head as he turned the page. Nothing really. Captain got called in for a meeting and the kid somehow got a hold of Rat's clothes and dyed them pink. Ox chuckled as he finished and Naoko shook her head. Why? Rat eat the last cup of instant ramen. She let out a sigh and sat down in a chair. That boy. Life for the Anbu babysitters had been interesting in the past few years. Naruto was now walking, talking and causing trouble almost daily. He was a blonde ball of energy that even the 4 experienced Anbu and Agaya had trouble tiring out. While he was a handful, Naoko had enjoyed her assignment more than she thought. Originally she joined Anbu for the excitement and danger. When she got the opportunity to work on the team her ideal was in charge of, she nearly fainted. Alas, things didn't work out like she hoped, but every cloud has a silver lining and she can't say she doesn't enjoy watching over the blonde heir. She was broken from her thought when the door opened and Hawk walked in. Good morning, sir, how was your meeting? Hawk looked over at her and shook his head while letting out a long sigh. It was informative to say the least. I'm going to lie down for a bit. She nodded and looked to Ox. What was that about? He shrugged but kept looking at his paper. Not sure, but if it's important, he will let us know. She sighed and headed down the hallway towards the library to find something to read to Naruto when he was done with his bath. Uchiha compound Fugaku Uchiha sat in a large room inside the Uchiha compound and ran his hand through his hair. He looked around the room at all of the clan members that were gathered with him. He and the clan elders had just broken the news that the village was investigating them for the Kyuubi attack. Apparently it is documented that the Kyuubi can be controlled by the Sharingan and many of the Uchiha were not present during the attack. Fugaku scoffed at that. Why should the village elite rush to their deaths when they had plenty of commoners to delay the beast? So what will we do, Fugaku-sama? He looked up at the man who spoke and let out a sigh. We are moving to a larger compound in the corner of the village for the time being. Many of the members were grumbling and scoffing at the news. One of the elders banged his hand on the table to get attention. This is an outrage. How can the village treat us, the most powerful clan in Konoha, like some kind of lepers? Many of the clansmen cheered the man on but stopped when Fugaku raised his hand for quiet. We will go along with this farce for now, but trust in me and the elder to find a solution. The men all looked around at each other but eventually all agreed to trust in them. Fugaku dismissed them all and when they were gone turned to the 5 elders. Fugaku, we should not be putting up with these. We helped found this village. We are the oldest remaining clan. They should be licking our boots in thanks for defending them. The others nodded along with the elder. And I agree, this act just proves that Konoha no longer cares for us and disrespects us. I have already ordered the military police to start investigating the other clans discreetly to find their weaknesses and to memorize any information they can on the non-clan shinobi. The elders smiled at his initiative. Good, but if we want to take our rightful place as the village leaders, we need more. A grin split across Fugaku's face and the elders looked confused. I already have thought of that. They looked between them before one asked. What do you have in mind, Fugaku? You all know my son Sasuke, correct? The men nodded. He is the same age as the Uzumaki boy. My plan is to have Sasuke befriend the boy and get him to just us. That way we will have the might of both the Uzumaki Fuinjutsu and the Kyuubi with us. The men gasped and one elder quickly spoke. Won't Hiruzen and the others view this as us trying to control the Kyuubi like they accused? Fugaku started to chuckle. Who cares? He views that boy like a grandson, and since none of the villagers allow their children to play with him and the clan children stay amongst themselves, mostly he is alone. If he makes friends with Sasuke, Hiruzen wouldn't dream of breaking the child's heart by telling him to stay away. The elders' eyes all widened and smirks went across their faces. So Hiruzen will be powerless to stop us from gaining control of the boy. We simply have to put on a smiling face and welcome the boy with open arms. The others all nodded to his thoughts, but Fugaku cut in. We must wait a while before we start our plan. If we try this so soon after the move, I fear they will catch on to our actions. The elders all agreed. Their plans would take time to bear fruit, but it would be worth it in the end. Hokage office. 2 years later. Hiruzen was sitting in his office giggling as he read his student's prize book. Ever since he became the Hokage again, this was the only time he could enjoy the work of art and get some rest from that evil that is paperwork. His free time was interrupted when his office door flew open and a blonde blur flew towards him. Gigi. Hiruzen barely had time to put his book into the drawer before the blonde missile hit him in the chest. After a grunt of pain, he looked down at the whiskered face of Naruto. The 5-year-old gave him a big grin. Hi Gigi, the Hokage chuckled as he ruffled the boy's hair. Hello to you too, Naruto-kun. Naruto, what have I told you about running through the tower? The 2 males turned to see Agaya walking into the office. Naruto placed his finger under his chin and hummed. More than one. Agaya let out a sigh and shook her head. Hiruzen chuckled and placed the boy on the ground. So Naruto-kun, what brings you here today? The boy grinned and ran to Agaya and started digging in a bag she was holding. Soon he pulled out a piece of paper and brought it over to the man. I drew this for you. Hiruzen picked up the picture and smiled. It was a crayon drawing of him and Naruto together. It's very nice, Naruto-kun. Thank you. The boy beamed at the praise. Gigi, can you come get ramen with us? Hiruzen sighed and shook his head. I'm sorry, Naruto, but I can't. Maybe next time. The blonde's smile faded some, but he hugged the Hokage leg. It's okay, Gigi, I understand you're busy running the whole village. Hiruzen smiled and ruffled Naruto's hair. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Now go enjoy your ramen and tell Tsuki-san to put it on my bill. Naruto's eyes got wide and he ran to Agaya. Come on Agaya-chan, free ramen. The woman put her hands on his shoulders to calm him down. I need to talk to the Hokage about something, so you go ahead and I'll meet you there. The boy nodded and raced out of the room. Agaya shook her head and closed the door before walking to the desk. Hiruzen watched her carefully and noticed she seemed nervous. How can I help you, Agaya-san? She took a deep breath. I think it is time I leave, Hokage-sama. The room was silent for a moment before he decided to speak. Has something happened to make you want to leave? I'm not sure if you are aware, but I have been seeing a merchant from the capital. When he comes for business, and he has asked me to marry him. Hiruzen nodded in understanding. Hawk had informed him of the relationship and he had the man investigated. He turned out to be fine, so Hiruzen forgot about him till now. He let out a sigh and looked up to Agaya. He couldn't ask her to pass this up no matter how much it would hurt Naruto, and he knew this day would come eventually. I guess congratulations are in order then, she smiled and nodded. Thank you, sir. I wanted to wait until after Naruto's birthday to bring it up. You know how that day gets him. Of course he did. Naruto was a smart child and quickly noticed that people stared at him and went out of their way to avoid him. Agaya had even told him how the children would avoid him or tease him on the playground, always encouraged by their parents. His birthday was worse than that though. The civilians would throw a big party honoring the 4th and his victory over the Kyuubi. There was a big festival with games, food and of course alcohol. This caused many of the villagers to want to vent their anger from that day. More than once he received reports from the Anbu about stopping villagers from entering the Uzumaki compound. And I thank you for that. It is a hard time for him. A sad smile went across her face as she nodded. Do you think he will be okay? Hiruzen leaned back into his chair and ran a hand through his thinning hair. He is a smart boy, Agaya. If you explain it to him, he will. He might be upset for a while, but I'm sure he will forgive you. She nodded and quickly rubbed her eyes to keep from tearing up. Thank you, Hokage-sama. You're welcome. When do you plan on leaving? Kenta-kun will be back in a week for business and I will leave with him when he is done. Hiruzen nodded. Alright, I will find someone by then to take your place. She nodded and picked up her bag and left the room. Hiruzen sighed as she closed the door. He pulled out his pipe and packed it with tobacco. Sparrow, an Anbu stepped forward from the shadows. Yes, Hokage-sama. Please find Hayate Gecko and bring him to the office. Hi. He disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Hiruzen started to work on his daily paperwork again while he waited for the men to return. After several minutes, 2 men appeared before him. One was Sparrow, the other was a pale-looking man with his headband covering his whole head. The man stood about average height, but his body seemed thin compared to most his age. You called for me, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen pulled out a folder and passed it to him. Yes, Hayate, I have a long-term assignment I was hoping you would take. Hayate looked surprised by that and opened the folder to see a picture of Naruto along with information sheets on him. That is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm sure you recognize the name. Coughing into his hand, he nodded. Good. Naruto has been under the care of a nurse who recently became engaged and will be leaving Konoha. As such, I need someone to watch over him. Hayate closed the folder. I mean no disrespect, Hokage-sama, but that doesn't seem like a job for a shinobi, especially a Tokubetsu Jonin. He started to cough as he finished. Normally I would agree, however Naruto is a special case. Not only is he a clan heir but also the holder of the Kyuubi, so I need people that I can trust and could keep him safe if need be. Hayate placed the folder on the desk. If that's true, who was watching him until now besides the woman? The folder said she was a civilian. I had an Anbu team watch over him, but he is growing up and I feel one skilled bodyguard would be enough. I see. He brought his hand to his chin and began to think. Was there a reason you picked me, sir? Hiruzen nodded and pulled another folder out, opening it himself. First, you are a skilled shinobi that has many successful bodyguard missions. Second, you are a kenjutsu specialist. I plan on giving Naruto his family scrolls soon and there is a high probability he will find ones on the Uzumaki sword style. I would like to have someone there to help him train. Hayate's attention perked up at that. Not many people in Konoha practiced kenjutsu and he knew of the Uzumaki style. Third, it says in your file you were recommended to join Anbu but because of your chronic cough were unable to join. Hiruzen looked up to get a confirmation on that from him. The person who recommended you is none other than Naruto's mother Kushina Uzumaki. For that reason I know I can trust you to watch over the boy. He closed the file and waited for Hayate to process everything. What will the mission rank be considered? It will be classified as a long-term B rank. Hayate nodded and closed his eyes in thought. It's not a bad gig honestly. Good pay. I stay in the village and it's not like the kid's a baby. Of course he is a kid so I'll have to pretty much raise him. He let out a sigh and opened his eyes. Would it be alright if I sleep on this and tell you in the morning Hokage-sama? Hiruzen nodded. Of course Hayate. He stood and bowed to the Hokage before exiting. Hiruzen turned and looked out the window. He decided to give Naruto his family scrolls after Agaya broke the news to him she was leaving. It would be a minor thing to losing his mother figure but hopefully he could connect to his real family in some way.